What if your HOA fined you 30 grand for a shed you built on your own damn land? What if the perfectly polite president doing it was secretly robbing the entire neighborhood blind? And what if one quiet widower's refusal to roll over turned a backyard project into the biggest suburban takedown of the year? Imagine waking up to the smell of fresh pine and sawdust, coffee in hand, thinking you finally carved out a little piece after losing the love of your life. That was Ryan Caldwell 2 years ago. 54, retired high school shop teacher, still wearing the same flannel shirts Sarah used to tease him about. Cancer took her fast, left him rattling around their beige-on-beige house in Maple Grove Estates like a ghost in his own life. The HOA covenant said every blade of grass had to be exactly 2.5 inches. God forbid it hit 2 5/8. So the place felt less like home and more like a museum where joy went to die. Then Uncle Ray's will drop the gift. 20 acres of raw Oregon hillside just beyond the last street sign, grandfathered land that predated the HOA by 20 years. Ryan drove out there one crisp morning, boots crunching on needles, and knew exactly what he needed. A small woodworking workshop, nothing fancy, just 4 walls where he could build birdhouses and bookshelves and remember what it felt like to create instead of comply. 30 years teaching kids how to read blueprints taught him one golden rule. Pull every permit first. County office, structural, electrical, septic, yellow stickers slapped on a pine tree like badges of honor. Legal as apple pie. Enter Patricia Patty Kensington. Maple Grove Estates board president, 59, going on eternal queen, always introduced herself with her title like it came with a crown. Patricia Kensington, HOA president. She'd purr in that syrupy voice that made "have a blessed day" sound like a threat. She ran the 5-person board like her personal fiefdom. Every mailbox the exact shade of approved sage. Every fence post measured to the 16th of an inch. Every flower bed planted with her pre-approved tasteful list. Patty carried a yellow tape measure in her designer purse the way other women carried lipstick, and she wasn't shy about whipping it out on offenders. Ryan was hammering the final trim when the crunch of tires on gravel announced her arrival. Patty stepped out of her pristine white SUV in heels that immediately sank into the soft earth, clutching a clipboard like a shield. "Mr." she called, sweet as artificial sweetener, picking her way toward him. "I do hope you've cleared this little hobby project with the appropriate authorities." Ryan wiped sawdust from his hands and gestured at the bright yellow county permit nailed to the tree. "All legal, ma'am." Patty's smile tightened just a fraction. Barely noticeable unless you'd spent years watching teenagers lie about homework. "County permits are one thing, dear. HOA standards are quite another. Our covenants are very clear about maintaining community aesthetics." She actually pulled out that damn tape measure and started eyeballing the distance from his workshop to the invisible line where manicured suburbia ended and real trees began. "We'll have to review this, of course. For the greater good." Ryan just nodded politely. Silence was the best armor against people who loved the sound of their own voice. 2 weeks later, the certified letter arrived. $30,000 for an unauthorized structure on land that wasn't even in their jurisdiction. Ryan sat on his half-finished porch, the paper shaking in his hands while the mountain breeze carried the scent of freedom right past Patty's invisible wall of rules. He called her the next morning, calm as still water. "Mrs. Ryan Caldwell. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property sits 912 feet outside Maple Grove boundaries." The pause on the line stretched like taffy. Then that corporate honey dripped through the phone. "Mr. I appreciate your concern, but our jurisdiction extends wherever community standards are at risk. Ignorance of the covenants is no excuse. Bless your heart." Click. Ryan stared at the dead phone. In Southern speak that meant "you're an idiot," but in Hoa Karen speak it meant, "I will bury you and plant petunias on your grave." That's when the psychological warfare began. First, the anonymous complaint to county code enforcement claiming Ryan was running an illegal commercial woodworking operation that lowered property values. Then the whispers at the community mailbox, neighbors suddenly fascinated by their shoelaces when he walked by. "Poor man's lost his mind since Sarah passed," someone murmured loud enough for him to hear. "Grief does strange things." Ryan kept his face neutral, But inside he was cataloging every face, every sideways glance. He'd been slandered before. Staff room politics at school taught him patience was a weapon. Patty's masterpiece came when she recruited the neighborhood watch into her personal spy ring. Every time Ryan's truck rumbled up the gravel road with lumber, phones came out. Snap. One afternoon she showed up at his actual front door in the main neighborhood, clipboard in hand, smile sharper than her heels. "Ryan, darling, I've been thinking. Immediately, we might reduce the fine to a mere $5,000, for the administrative inconvenience, of course." Ryan looked at this woman standing on his porch offering to graciously steal 83% less of his money, and felt something cold click into place.
"Mrs." he said quietly, "I think it's time I did a little research of my own."
Her smile flickered like a faulty fluorescent bulb. Research? How quaint. That night Ryan sat at his kitchen table surrounded by public records printouts, the smell of cold coffee mixing with the metallic taste of righteous anger. 30 years teaching teenagers had taught him one truth: bullies always overplay their hand. And Patty Kensington had just handed him the whole deck. By morning he was at the county courthouse, armed with coffee and a quiet fury that had been simmering for months. Paper trails don't lie, and HOA boundaries are filed in triplicate for a reason. Ryan found the original plat maps in 20 minutes. Maple Grove Estates Authority ended exactly at Granite Ridge Road, 912 feet before his workshop. His land was grandfathered, untouchable. A quick call to a retired surveyor buddy confirmed it with GPS precision. Certified copies went out to every board member with a polite note: "Please withdraw the fine and issue a formal apology." Patty's reply was immediate and unhinged. "Surveyor error." Payer face lean. Then the real blitzkrieg hit: new violation notices for his main house. Mailbox 2 inches too close to the sidewalk, $500. Fence stain weathered beyond standards, $750. His old pickup truck now classified as a commercial vehicle, in a residential zone, $1,200. Patty was building a case, piling on fines like a kid stacking blocks before kicking them over. Ryan never yelled. Neighborhood Facebook page. He just smiled politely at the grocery store and kept digging. 3 days of Secretary of State filings revealed the gold mine. Maple Grove collected $210,000 in dues yearly, but legal fees alone ate $52,000. Payments to the same law firm that represented Patty's husband's company. Ryan started knocking on doors with a simple question: "Ever get hit with a fine you couldn't fight?" The stories poured out. Martha fined $900 for planting daisies instead of approved hydrangeas. Bob threatened with liens over a satellite dish, visually disruptive. Jennifer slapped for running a home Etsy shop. Every single violation funneled through the same lawyers. Every homeowner paid rather than fight. The emergency community meeting notice called it urgent safety concerns regarding disruptive members. Translation: Patty planned to paint Ryan as the crazy grieving widower harassing the board. He spent 3 nights preparing like it was finals week. Foam boards, aerial photos, Harold the old treasurer's widow showing up with a dusty box of bank statements her late husband had hidden before his stroke. Thursday night the community center smelled like cheap coffee and fear. Patty opened in her navy power blazer, voice dripping honey. "We're here to protect our property values from one individual's harassment." She gestured at Ryan like he was roadkill. Ryan stood, calm as ever, and unrolled the first map. "Before we discuss harassment, Mrs. Kensington, could you explain exactly where the HO's authority ends?" The room went dead quiet when he pointed to the red line, 912 feet short of his workshop. Murmurs turned to gasps. 80 years old and 5 feet of pure steel, slammed Harold's folder on the table. "These aren't private records," she announced. "My husband kept everything. Unexplained checks to shell companies. Payments to vendors that never showed up. And look, every major fine went straight into legal fees that somehow ended up in accounts tied to Patty's address." Patty's face went the color of spoiled milk. "This is elder abuse. These documents are unreliable." But the crowd was done. One by one homeowners stood, sharing their own stories until the room sounded like a pressure cooker ready to blow. When Ryan played the security footage, Patty in dark clothes trying to sabotage his generator with a crowbar, the gasps turned to outright fury. Sheriff's deputies were waiting in the lobby. Handcuffs clicked around Patty's wrists while she screamed about frame jobs and ungrateful peasants. The cameras caught every second. By morning the story was national. HOA president arrested for embezzlement, fraud, and running a kickback empire that stretched across 3 counties. Federal investigators swooped in, recovered over $2 million, and Maple Grove got $312,000 in restitution. 6 months later, the new board passed the Transparency Covenant. Monthly audits, homeowner votes on legal spending, actual democracy. Ryan's workshop still stands, now famous as the place where one quiet man took down a suburban dictator. Neighbors wave when he drives by. Kids point at the cabin and whisper, "That's where the revolution started." Bullies count on you staying quiet, scared too alone. But when one person refuses to bend, the whole rotten system cracks. Document everything, find your allies, and watch the Karens of the world melt like cheap makeup in the rain. Your HOA might think they own your soul, but they don't own the truth. And the truth? It always collects interest.